Welcome to Going Deeper with David Steele, the show that dives into the heart of environmental solutions while literally floating on the source, the ocean. In just a few short minutes, we'll meet with the entrepreneurs and game changers that are making a difference in people's lives through the products and services they provide. Get ready to unplug from the matrix of mediocrity and plug into nature as we discuss the solutions to many of today's biggest challenges. It's time to go deeper. All right. I am super stoked to do an episode of Going Deeper with my new dear friend, Ian Michael. I've spent the last few days at his ridiculously amazing retreat center that he built, Holos, holos.global. It is freaking incredible. And right now we're sitting in one of the rivers. We hiked I don't know how far up and down, looking for the quietest spot to record this, but just beyond excited for you to meet this incredible man and to hear about what he's doing to make the land so much better than it was and in a regenerative fashion, and really just incredible. Ian, I am so stoked to meet with you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here in the water, my favorite place. Yeah. Thanks for being willing to go a little bit deeper and explore the nooks and crannies. Mm-hmm. There's no better thing that I could do on a Sunday than explore the river here. And right now we're sitting in the Diamante River, the Diamond River, and it's named after the Diamante Falls, which is this 600-foot waterfall that you can see from the ridge. Yeah.
It's the tallest waterfall in Costa Rica?
Yeah, tallest waterfall in Costa Rica. So a lot of the property of Holos looks at that waterfall, and there's all these fables about that waterfall. The indigenous people that once lived here, the Baruca, of which we have many of them are living on the land again, but they used to go to the top of the falls, and there's a massive cave behind the waterfall that you can sleep in, and there's a kitchen and all these things. They used to go there to watch their ancestors transition out of the world. So they would bury their ancestors down here in the valley or up on the ridges and go to the top of the falls and watch their ancestors transition and celebrate them. So it's like some powerful energy here.
That's incredible. So I have so much that I want to talk to you about. And first off, you know how environmental I am, and this podcast is about what we could do to be environmental. You came into this land just 2.5 years ago, and what you've done is nothing less than amazing. But tell me about the food farm and some of the regenerative aspects to what you're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell a little bit of a story about the origins of Holos and why we chose Costa Rica. I grew up in Alaska, and when I was 17, I had a revelation that I wanted to be vegetarian, and it wasn't the most popular choice in my cultural scene there in Alaska, where a lot of people subsistence hunt and fish. And so I got this idea that if I wanted to live sustainably, if I wanted to live in harmony with the earth and know where my food came from, that Central America was probably the best place to go. So I started hitchhiking when I was 18 in the hopes of getting to Belize or Costa Rica to get to know the local people, and I wanted to farm yams. And so it was kind of a wild, harebrained idea, but I made it as far as midway through Mexico and fell in love with a waterfall there and felt complete there was a very deep spiritual component to that whole journey. But then I found myself back in Alaska. I got married, had a child, got really into regenerative development, wrote a degree in eco-resort design and development, did all these different chapters of life. And then 2 decades later, I found myself finally in Costa Rica and just really fell in love with this land. And particularly 5 years ago when I learned about this property, which a group was stewarding, and they were going to build a yoga retreat center, I just really fell in love with it. And through COVID, I was just kind of patient, and eventually they wanted to sell the property. So at the time, it was just cattle farmed. So about 50% of the initial 120 acres was cattle farm and grass. And there are places where cattle farming can be regenerative, that you can do it in a way that you do grazing in patterns where it actually builds up the soil carbon and all of that. But this is not the type of topography where you can do that. It's it's steep clay hills, and so as the rains come and the cattle are feeding, they really cut away all of the soil, and also just the biodiversity lost is pretty considerable. So we've been on a mission to regenerate the land and turn it back into fruit forest or into hardwood forest. So we did a permaculture study, which was like a 200-page manual for how we would regenerate this land. And the goal was to be able to feed 100 people and have more than 50% of the land in conservation and wild space. So last year we planted, I think, 1,500 trees, and we're on track again this May and June to plant another 1,500 more. And then also, just because there's already so much biodiversity in the region, the land will go back to wilderness pretty quickly. So we're in this corridor that goes down to the Osa Peninsula. So just south of here, there's a peninsula it has the highest biodiversity on Earth. Yeah,
it's incredible.
By density, it's just packed full of different species. So we have that influence of all the biodiversity and the proximity to that allows for a lot of species to move back in. But there was already like a great deal of biodiversity on this land itself. So I've seen jaguars and jaguarundis and all kinds of different birds. My mom was here recently, and she and my stepdad tracked about 50 birds just from my porch in a couple days. So there's a huge amount of biodiversity that helps to seed more wilderness. And what we're trying to show is a model where humans and the wild can really be in balance with each other, that we're not pushing anything out. And we have a large portion of the property dedicated to conservation, another large portion dedicated to regenerative agriculture. And Costa Rica is really fertile ground for this, not just because of the climate and the soils, but also it has a regenerative story itself, which is in the 70s, a majority of Costa Rica had been deforested, and then they put in some really strong laws around reforestation and put together some large parks for conservation. And so now more than 70% of Costa Rica is forested, and they have really good laws to preserve the biodiversity here. So we're just a part of that. And yeah.
I love that. And staying on your amazing property, first off, the food has been incredible. And, I know all of the plants that we ate were grown here. But this morning, having some amazing Costa Rican coffee, and a toucan flies, not just by, but by and around. And I just watched it in slow motion, and it was like the coolest thing. And it's the third time I've seen a toucan in your land in 2 days, which is pretty amazing. And, I think one of the things for me that's really striking is that so often when we talk about being environmental, we're talking about just doing a little bit better, like still costing the environment, just trying to cost it less, maybe using less plastic or, doing something like that. And where I've been taken back, especially on your land, is it's not about doing less. It's about how can we make the land better. And, I remember as we were driving and you were showing me the sugar cane that you planted, and and then how they harvest that, and then the chickens and the parts that you made for the community. I think I've seen at least 3 or 4 different sets of natural stairs that came down to the river so people can enjoy nature and the beauty. And it's not just for you, it's for the community, which is really, really cool. Yeah. And so, I think it's opened my eyes, Costa Rica, into how can we step into more greatness, more than sustainability, but more into regeneration. And, and it's not just you, it's like a culture that's here, but you're really strong. I think I had like 5 different people said, you have to meet with Ian Michael, And so, I'm so glad that we're here. And, we actually did carry a paddleboard all the way down here to the river, but it was just too loud wherever we can put it in. So we had to hike and find a quiet spot. But it's nice to go deep with you here in the shallow river. But it's pretty amazing. So I want you to share a little bit more about your why, because like what you've done in 2.5 years, some people would take 20 years, and there's something that's driving you that made you want to do all this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say there's 3 aspects of my why that I would want to share today. One is the part of regeneration, and it's not that I am preparing necessarily for a civilizational collapse, but I do feel like there's some very big changes happening in the world economically and socially. And so a big part of my why is how do we build culture and build examples of how we can live close to the land, support each other. And so that's a really big part of my why. Growing up in Alaska, food, shelter, water were life and death situations. When it's 65 below zero, if you don't have...
I don't have a reference.
If you don't have good shelter and you don't have access to water, you can melt snow, but that's not easy. There was a period of time where we didn't have running water at my house, and so you melt snow or go to a depot and pick up water. And then food, it's like in Alaska, yes, if you're hunting and you're in a place where the population center isn't too big and there's a lot of game or fish, then you're fine. But there's a 3-month period there where there's very, very little food and everything has to be shipped in. And so I just had this ingrained early on of like, know where your food comes from and ideally have it in a local place and know that it's actually doing better for the soil and the land than industrial agriculture is doing today. So that was a really big motivation for why I wanted to build Holos, was to show an example and also for my own food security of how you can live locally. And the next major why was really a spiritual why of wanting to live close to nature and immersed in nature. And I grew up in the middle of Alaska where it was pretty wild, but then I spent a decade in San Francisco and Marin, and I would spend weekends in Marin and San Francisco, and then my weekdays I was working at Esalen Institute in Big Sur, so I had a pretty good balance there. But I have always had a fascination and love of water. And so one reason I was really excited about this podcast is your focus on the water and that you do some of these on paddle boards. And I had a little family cabin. My dad was the first backcountry ranger in Denali Park. And we had this little family cabin above the Nenana River across the way from Denali Park. And I just grew up listening to the river and loving the river and like feeling its pull and its hypnotic nature. And then when I was 18, as I hitchhiked from Alaska to Mexico, I ended up somewhere, this little town called Yalapa. And at the time, it didn't have running water or it didn't have electricity. It had running water, but it didn't have electricity. And so I took a boat there and I hiked up and I found these waterfalls. And I found a waterfall that I could sit behind, and I started singing and like toning. And it started reflecting off all of the droplets underneath this waterfall. And I had what could be called like a unitive experience. My body disappeared. I turned into light. I was looking up at the sun, and the sun became like the emanation of all existence and all form. And I became one with that sun. And so I was in a very heightened state of consciousness for weeks after that experience. I went back to my friend in Puerto Vallarta, and he saw me and he was like, "Have you been doing drugs up in the jungle?" And I'm like, "No, I stopped doing drugs when I left Alaska." And so I was looking when I came to Costa Rica and with Holos for a place where I could really be in devotion to the river and to the waters. And so we steward 2 kilometers of watershed here and on this Diamante River. And there's also a lot of other great stewards upriver from us. And we all understand that water is life and that protecting the waterways and understanding how we can honor the water is really important. And one of the interesting things about climate change and the day and age that we're in is there's these major spikes in like heat, cold, lots of water, like events become larger. And one of the things that we know in studying ecology is that biodiversity and ecology and plants, they help to slow those cycles down or to mitigate. Like if you get a heavy rain in the jungle, there may be a little bit of disruption and some soil loss. But if you had that same amount of rain and you didn't have the plant species, it can, wipe out a whole area. There's a book I'm reading about the desert, and it said the 2 main ways that you can die in the desert is from starvation or drowning. And that's because in the desert, if the water comes, it'll come in these flash floods that are just massive. So I've learned so much about the water from living here on the river and just throughout my life being a student of the water. And like you said, for this podcast, we couldn't get away from the sound of the river. And as I was walking with you, I was like, hey, listen, like she's got a different voice in all of these areas. And so I really think that part of becoming an environmentalist or really understanding how to live regeneratively is about listening. And the river is such a powerful teacher. So I would say that's the second major why. And the third is I want to do healing work. I want people to have a place that they can come and feel safe and nourished and have transformative experiences, that when they come out of those experiences, there's an atmosphere that repatterns them into what is possible for humanity. So like having psychotherapy or a powerful psychedelic journey in a urban setting is very different than having that in nature, and like the toucans that you were talking about, starting to commune with the landscape and turning on something that is indigenous to all of us, which is just this way of sensing and communicating with the natural world that most people in Western civilization have forgotten. And so the third piece that's really important to me, my why, is like a re-educating people and like realizing the animism of everything, and doing that in a place where people can see, oh yeah, we don't have to have as much waste, or we can eat clean and healthy, just all these things. That was the reason I went and I created this degree in my 20s in eco-resort design and development, because I felt like that could be a really good avenue. Hospitality would be a really good avenue for teaching people another way of being.
I don't know if it's because of the studies that you did, but you did a stellar job with your center. I mean, like, first off, I don't think I saw concrete anywhere. Like, your building materials, you so much of it is out of bamboo and natural woods here in Costa Rica. And besides just being epically beautiful, I could tell that it was very gentle on the environment, everything that you built, and then the sort of luxury glamping that you built, it was not what I expected. It's really, really nice. So I super appreciated that. But, I think about it, and, we talk about different things like being more regenerative, or taking a land that was once a cattle farm and, making it a food forest, and all that's cool. And then the other part that I want to do is, when someone's listening to this and, it's more, yes, I want you to come and see holos.global, because I think that you just have to experience it. I couldn't even describe it. I'll take some more background video and things like that, but you have to experience it. But then also, how can we come back into our own lifestyle and do more that's more regenerative? Myself planting a garden is one of the most like personally rewarding things. It's not like it's a big deal, and I don't even, I'm not yielding for 100 people. I'm yielding for 5 maybe, or 10, but it's very rewarding, and so I kind of like want to motivate people to follow the path and to do something, work on a community garden, or get food locally, if you can, do things like that, but then also take the time to step into nature. What I love about Costa Rica is that they're using renewable energy sources as a whole. The country doesn't have a military force, so that like shifts the energy somewhat as well. And they put a value on nature. So you can't just buy land and cut down trees. That's like against the law, which is incredible. And you can't just build on the beach. There's like a block to keep you from doing that. And, I think when it comes to environmentalism, there's those two components. There's education and there's legislation, and Costa Rica represents the best of both. There's people that are doing what you're doing, and then there's legislation that says, no, this is who we are as a country, and we're going to put value on nature. We're not going to let you put up a condominium there. It's not going to happen. And I think that that's really cool, and I probably met, I don't know, half a dozen people here that have big properties, and for the most part, most of it is for nature. They're using a small piece, just like you are. So you have close to 200 acres, and you probably have developed a dozen.
Yeah, not even that in terms of buildings.
Right. Yeah, it's just a really cool thing, and I know that you're somewhat of a thought leader on how people can utilize plant medicines to be able to look at things within themselves and to be able to step into a higher version of themselves. And so you've built an incredible place to, have people come and experience those kind of things, which I think is incredible. Mm-hmm. And I think what I'd love to do is we'll do another episode where we kind of focus on what's possible in that realm, because I think, I know you have a lot to say there. I know you've done a lot, and I was blown away. The only and I don't have regrets, but I've been here for almost a month, and it's just the last couple of days with you. I am going to come back, and I'll share a link to a place that they refer to as the Nest. And Ian Michael built a place in the middle of the jungle with a waterfall going by. That's a round structure that's entirely glass, 360 degrees. And it's like a perfect little tiny home nestled in the jungle with steps down to the waterfall and to a beautiful swimming pool, part of the stream. It's incredible. So I'll share that link for sure. And that is one of many. I haven't seen your house. I haven't seen many of the things that you've done. But when I stepped into that, I'm like, oh my God, you just added something to my vision board. That's just amazing. I'm home. Yeah.
If you think about nature and how beautiful it is here, the hope is that it inspires us to create more beauty. And it's like each plant has its own expression, and it's flowering and it's blossoming. And a lot of times those blossoms are beautiful, and that's why we put them on our dining room tables or whatever, adorn our houses with them. And if you think about humanity as a species, like, what is our expression? What is our blossoming? And I think that the built environment can be that. So that's part of why I love architecture and am a designer, is because I think that can really express the human spirit and the human potential. And we also have gotten to a stage where we like comforts, It's the jungle is very real here. There's bugs and creatures, and some of them are deadly. And so how can we create spaces that give people the feeling of safety and inspiration while being immersed in this much life force? Because the way life works is it's always recycling itself. And so it's like, if the human that comes into that environment is not prepared to be attuned, nature will dispose of those weaker links. And so, we try to create a very safe, sweet environment for people, and the bamboo structures that you talked about and the little nest that we call El Nido. Those are examples of, how can we build spaces that are safe and beautiful. And I personally really like nice things. I like soft sheets and a warm bed and all of the things. So we've tried to create that kind of environment. And I had a slogan at one point where it's like, we want people to be able to come for a day, a week, or a lifetime. So this stay, you're coming for a few days and getting a sense of it. And then maybe you'll come back for a plant medicine journey. And then a lot of people have chosen to build houses here, and we've sold out most of the lots in the community. And it's a beautiful group of people that are like-minded. And one of the insights I had when I was consulting and building retreat centers for other people is, one of the components that was missing was the long-term residents that really hold the culture. And so the intention here is that there's a larger, what we call a container or environment, a human environment, a social environment, where we're cultivating practices and singing together and dancing together and sharing meals and cultivating a food system. And I would say that the common denominator for everybody is the love of the wilderness and of the river. But then secondarily, a lot of people are very much supportive of plant medicine and these healing modalities that we'll get into in a future episode, because I do have a lot to say about that. But really, plant medicine is just about how do we become more intimate with ourselves and with all of life. And you don't even need to work with plant medicine to experience that here on this land or anywhere in the wilderness. You become acutely aware of your mortality and your humanness, and you bump up against the places where you may need some refinement as a human, and you get to you get to see the power of nature. And I think that that's all that plant medicine is really doing, is stripping back the layers to show us our own humanity, and that we're part of something that is this really exquisite planet that just wants to be loved and wants us to participate in the dance of life in a good way.
I'm so appreciative of what you created here. And, I didn't go into detail, but oftentimes when you build a place, especially deep in nature, the devil's in the details. And the details of your place, every sink is stone. There's an outdoor stone bathtub next to a cold plunge. The bamboo is bent and woven into shapes that allow you to have these like incredible shalas throughout the place. I had a massage today in a healing shala that was like epic, and I can hear the birds and feel it was amazing. And so, I don't want to understate what you've created here, because it's really something quite extraordinary. And I love that you have a vision for, the community as well. And I think we've covered a lot. I'm going to absolutely, share the info of how to get a hold of Ian Michael and how to visit this place. But I'm just incredibly thankful. And I love it when I find kindred spirits, because I'm a total waterman. We're sitting in this incredible stream, and, I know I could drink this water if I wanted to. It's so crystal clear here and beautiful. And I'm just very thankful and appreciative that so many people pointed me to you. Thank you
so much. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Going Deeper with David Steele. I hope you found inspiration and insight to fuel your passion for a better world. Remember, change starts with us, and together we can be the driving force for a brighter, more sustainable future. So until next week, keep your hearts open, your minds curious, and your actions aligned with the planet's well-being. Stay committed, stay conscious, and let's meet right back here next time for another deep dive into making a difference.